One of the things I love about either getting lost in the city, in any city, or coming to a new community is that though in my mind I know that there are billions of humans in the world, there's nothing compared to the moment I realize that you exist and that you realize that I am here and that for a moment we can be together and there's no denial. Those invisible strings become visible in our coming together. So thank you for having me. I've been working as a hospital chaplain for almost 3 years, and when I go into a room and I explain my role to people, well, I do get the typical, am I dying? And I'm like, no, I'm just here to check in. Oh, this must be really bad if you're coming to see me. No. So I always just explain my role and say, I'm just here to offer emotional and spiritual support to patients. And one of the things I truly love about my job is the opportunity I am given to meet people truly from all walks of life. And going from room to room, I may encounter a veteran, a philosopher, an unhoused person, a homemaker, someone's child, someone's parent or grandparents, and people who carry all kinds of beliefs. It is such a gift to see humans being humans in both unique and collective ways. And as a chaplain, my goal is to accompany people as they grapple with a new diagnosis, as they recover from an illness, or as they prepare to leave the world or to say goodbye to a loved one. I don't really have an agenda when I walk into a room. Instead, I allow their story, their sharing to shape the course of our time together. But I do carry 2 questions with me. One, I wonder how I would respond if I were going through the same thing. And 2, I wonder, what does this person's experience and story tell me about being human? Now, the other thing about working in a hospital is that the focus of everything is around the body. The doctors and nurses talk about patients in terms of their medical needs, their diagnosis and prognosis. And chaplains, or better said, this chaplain knows nothing about the medical needs of a patient, though I'm learning, I'm catching up things. So my focus then is on how the challenges their bodies face are impacting their inner life, and also how their inner life, inner resources can help them cope with their physical challenges. So this practice of navigating the relationship between the inner life of a person and their physical needs, or the physical expression of their spiritual distress, is what led me to bring this conversation to you. But also my ongoing curiosity to understand what it means to be human, my wonderings about being human, and more specifically, what does it mean to experience this experience of being embodied in flesh and to be aware of this embodiment? What does that mean? And we live in societies that tend to place more value on reason, the use of the mind, than on feelings and emotions, yet emotions and feelings are. And until recently, there was little understanding about how our emotions and how our feelings influence reason. Being human, in its most basic understanding, means being embodied in a vessel of flesh and bones and breathing. A vessel with which we experience the world in both unique and collective ways. Our bodies are constantly collecting information from our surroundings, even before we can make sense of it. And by the time we are able to name an emotion, an experience, or an object, several processes have taken place inside of us. Most of my patients struggle with their feelings. They struggle because they think they should be able to control what they feel and how they feel. They stress over not being the strong person they thought they were and feel guilty when they find themselves crying and vulnerable or struggling to contain their feelings. And maybe sometimes you too. And while we often use feeling and emotion interchangeably, scientists distinguish between the two. For scientists, emotions are raw data, lower-level responses to stimuli, and feelings are the subjective interpretation of those responses. So emotions are physiological, feelings is how we interpret those physical sensations. Bodies sense, and people feel. And people feel all the time. Not all the things that we sense will turn into a strong feeling or emotion, but our bodies are sensing the world all the time. Your bodies are sensing the world right now. Our brains receive the overwhelming amount of information that our bodies sense and turn it into information that help us act, behave, and be in a social environment like ours. If the temperature were to drop, you may be looking for a sweater, or if it raises, you may be looking for ways to get some fresh air or turn on the AC. Have you heard the phrase that our bodies regenerate every 7 years? Well, it's not like a deadline where cells all of a sudden are like, 7 years, it's up, let us all go, and new people are moving in. But it's more, there's different parts of our bodies that have different timelines. So for some of our cells, it may be hours. For some others, maybe a few days, some months, and some even years or decades. Now, think of this as the fact that your body is constantly participating in the co-creation of itself. Isn't that fascinating? Allow yourself to be amazed by the fact that within you, there is a whole world, both physical and metaphysical, that is also worthy of awe, that is mysterious and often unperceivable. In the reading from Mark Nepo, he reminded us, you are the only explorer, your heart, the unreadable compass, your soul, the share of a promise too great to be ignored. And I understand Mark Nepo's use of the word soul as that immense world within that each person carries. Once, my doctor sent me to get an abdominal ultrasound. And as the technician moved around the area my doctor indicated, she turned something on and I heard a loud whoosh. It caught me by surprise, and before I could ask, she said, nothing to worry, just blood flow. And I was like, blood flow? I then understood that I had rivers flowing inside of me. And then I thought about my own heartbeat and about the many other sounds inside my body that I cannot hear. It was wonderful to realize that my body was not quiet or silent as I like to think when I meditate or when I invite people to tap to the silence within. The miracle was my ability to hear, then to understand what was being said to me, and finally, the processes that took place in my brain that brought me awareness of the moment and the happenings inside and outside of me. The miracle of feeling is the miracle of being able to interpret the sensations and emotions within us. It is self-awareness. In his book, The Feelings of What Happens, neuroscientist Antonio Damasio explores the connection between body, emotion, and consciousness. And he writes, after considering how consciousness may be produced within the 3 pounds of flesh we call brain, we may revere life and respect human beings more rather than less. He also states that sometimes we use our mind not to discover facts, but to hide them. And that the body is one of those things our mind can hide best, because otherwise, he says, we would know that emotions and feelings are tangibly about the body. So what I like to advocate for is for that knowledge and that connection with the body. And I acknowledge that pain, illness, trauma can make inhabiting our bodies a difficult task. Yet, even so, our actions are still influenced by the sensations of our bodies. Take, for instance, the moments when you walk into a room and you feel that something is off, or you feel a sense of peace and calm. Or think about when you fell in love with someone and you were overtaken by all that you experience at the moment. We experience sensations and emotions and we label them. But what goes on in our bodies remains a mystery to all of us. Recently, I came across a video that showed what happiness really looks like. And the description of the video by John Lever reads, "This is what a kinesin protein might look like. Molecules of the protein myosin drag a ball of endorphins along an active filament into the inner part of the brain's parietal cortex, which produces feelings of happiness." Very chemical. As science continues to advance and to explore more the inner workings of our brains, especially when it relates to the emotions we experience, we are both given answers and moments of awe and are left with questions and the task of making sense of what this means to us. So let me go back to my story about meeting patients. When I ask myself, what does this person's experience tell me about being human? I am inviting myself to stop any judgment, any preconceived ideas I may have, and to instead hold space for the uniqueness of the person to show up. Because you see, I am convinced that each person has a unique path to follow, and that the direction to follow that path can only come from their own compasses if they tune in with it enough to listen to it. While living in our heads has given us the wonderful gifts of civilization, not allowing ourselves to be in tune with how our bodies move and exist in the world, will leave us with incomplete perceptions. There are so many things that we humans have been able to achieve, knowledge and discoveries about the world we live in, but we are still surrounded by mystery. I wonder how we may be different, how we understand ourselves and one another, if we brought curiosity to the forefront. So when I ask, what does this person's experience tell me about being human? I'm not seeking a definite answer. I already know I can't find it. Instead, I am inviting and stretching the boundaries of what I think being human is, to be more inclusive, to be more expansive. In fact, whenever I feel that I had answers or guidance to give to people, I have found out that I was given the answers and the guidance that had worked in my path, in my own journey, the only journey I truly know. But if I hold space and invite questions, I have seen how beautiful the teacher within each person emerges and gives them the answers they're seeking. And I learn in the process too, because I hear people come up with their own answers, ones that are so different from my own. And I am given the opportunity to remember that there are so many ways to be in the world. We live in a world of chaos that we strive to make sense of. And we sometimes, and some of us, more than others, experience our own inner chaos. And when we find ourselves in those spaces of confusion and uncertainty, we do our best to make sense of that process. But because we are only aware of our own inner process, many of us to think that others have it easy, resolved, fixed. And yes, if you add the complex systems that humans created and that are often oppressive, we know that the struggles of some are already more than others. But I also think that this awareness can help us relate to one another with more care and compassion. And repeating the words of Antonio Damasio, after considering how consciousness may be produced within the 3 pounds of flesh we call brain, we may revere life and respect human beings more rather than less. The condition of being human is the condition of living in a vessel of flesh with complex, mysterious processes that are not fully known to us, but that impact us on a daily basis. Being human is also the ongoing questioning and struggle to find out exactly what and who we are and to understand life. Being human is about a relationship with others and with the world. Being human is about the active and unconscious acts that co-create the world, and about returning to the reality of being, after all, bodies that sense, that feel and try to make sense of the world, of narratives, stories, knowledge, curiosity, delight, savoring, movement, building, and thinking. I mean, you can also love your liver and your kidneys and your lungs and your heart. What can anyone give you greater than now? William Stafford reminds us. At the end, our bodies always exist in this present moment where life happens outside of them and also within them at the same time. So being human is also about a mind that has the capacity to think in the past tense or to plan for the future, but that exists in a body that is only in the now. As a chaplain, I accompany people and bear witness to their unique experience, but I also often normalize their feelings. I have learned that if we can work through the shame or guilt they experience for feeling the way they feel, they too will feel more expansive and able to lean into the experience that their now is presenting them. With all the unknowns that still surround our existence, I invite you to consider that being human is not just the condition of being born, of existing and knowing the world through our flesh, but that it is our life vocation. That being human is a becoming, a journey, a process of discovery, rediscovery, co-creation, of leaning into the experience of life fully, of wondering about the world outside, the world within, and the vast and individual worlds that keep us company, that sit next to you at church or the dinner table. That being human is the condition of loving life and feeling life, of feeling and loving the world with all of its uncertainty, with all of its unanswered questions, with all the heartbreak, with the conviction to help heal others, with the understanding that the mystery behind it all may never be revealed to us, that yet it calls us over and over again to love and to the experience of being both the lover and the beloved. May it be so.